As you can tell, I'm not in studio, but we're going out also on the Facebook and YouTube of Joe Martinez and KCYP, the city, 97.7 McAllen. You know, I really enjoy doing this show. I I won't say that my Thursdays revolve around the show, but I'll tell you what, I really enjoy um, communicating, connecting with those of you out there, and regardless of whether you agree with me or not, any chance that we have to connect, to talk, to discuss, man, I those are the things that I really enjoy. So if you're watching now or watching later, doesn't matter. I appreciate it. I really do. Um, I want to say a couple things right out from the start. I want to say that I've got a friend of mine that needs some prayer, and she's in a difficult time right now. And I won't get into too many issues, but her name is Deb, and she's she's been a friend for probably about, gee, well, we work together, so that means that it's been a while. So she is she's not doing so well. So if you want to give a shout out to Deb, but please don't do it in the air. Do it to our King Jesus, if you're so inclined, and um, if you're the praying kind. So I just like to tell you that. Ask about prayer for her, and letting God know that, not that He doesn't know this already, that she's in a health situation, but that we care about her. We care enough to pray. Thank you. So, what do we have to talk about this week? We have the usual. We'll go over, let's say, gold price. I think it was 4,700 a few minutes ago, per ounce. Silver is $76 per ounce. It went up, it spiked again, and they're still manipulating. It's still a joke to them. Still something that they don't take seriously, and that we should never ever think that any market is actually trading honestly in this country, or the world for that matter. It's not the case that it's an honest, rules based exchange between markets and individual investors. Frank, good to see you, Frank. That's whatever the cause, or whatever manipulation techniques they use, be they in, let's say, if you want to mess with the oil market, you do something as a state actor to create a change. Yeah, that's a more overt action. But I think the real evil people are in those transcontinental cables that go under the ocean, or the algorithms that are dealt with in microseconds, so that people like you and me can never get an advantage in the markets. That is the manipulation, I think, that goes on most predominantly. So if we think that hey, and I did think this a while back in the early 90s, I dabbled in commodities. So, coffee, sugar, cocoa, pork bellies, all that kind of stuff, right? So I think I actually got in a silver option or something like that. But the fact remains that none of that. And I thought at the time that I was engaging in a system that played by the rules, and that if I were able to study enough of the patterns and so forth, and learn the markets, that I would have a good chance to make some money for my family, save up money, get some returns, put some discipline on myself to study and get into the markets. I thought that would, get me somewhere, but no, I maybe not soon learned, but years subsequent to my not so prolific trading career, I learned that pretty much all markets are rigged, and that's just the way it is. It's not good, but it helps you to realize that, wait a minute, when it's down, it's going to come up, and when it's up, it's going to go down, and it doesn't necessarily rely on the things that they tell us it relies on. It just relies on who's rigging it at the time. And probably the biggest one is the silver market, because the evil ones, they have the most to lose. The bankers. I mean, that's just who they are. All wars are bankers' wars, right? So what they have pretty much 100% of the time is a war against you and me. You see, they don't want us to know what they know, and they don't want us to have what they have. So they try to lock us out and keep us out, but whatever. That's still this world alone, right? We are not focused on just this world, are we? No, certainly not. So some of the things going on this week that we haven't talked about. Matt says hello, Matt. Matt says it's a big club and we're not in it. You know, I think of that saying, and of course you're quoting who's the guy? I'm having a brain fart here. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was brilliant, and he was well ahead of his time. See, nobody saw things the way he saw them, right? Nobody saw them in such corrupt. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but they didn't see things for the corrupt things that they were when he saw them. And help me out, George Carlin. Thank you, Barry. Good to see you, Barry. George Carlin, yes. So George Carlin, I mean, you got to be warned that if you're watching with your kids around, you probably want to turn it off. But George Carlin was articulate in the way he described that the bankers of this world, put the screws to the little people like you and me. And I can certainly tell you that it has not stopped, nor has it even, put cruise control on. They've only basically accelerated the whole process. But, ladies and gentlemen, there's a big but. I believe, now I don't think that they're going to be destroyed altogether, but I believe that there's an off-ramp. And some of the things that I've been talking about are going to come together, not because I'm talking about them, but because there are people in positions of authority, power, you can use that word also as well, that are creating a landscape. And I'm talking right now specifically about the Genius Act, right? And then you have the other that I don't necessarily know the titles of them, but they are coming into a place to carve out a regulatory playing field. And right now, and I think was it yesterday? I think yesterday I saw a video very well articulated. If you haven't ever been to, and this looks like it's coming out backwards on the screen, maybe it's not for you. It says Ark Encounter. So the ministry is called Answers in Genesis. And they have a life-size ark, and it is their museum. It's a literally huge boat, and they have inside of the boat, they have the museum. I've been to that, I think, once, maybe twice. I might have gone twice. I can't remember. I do know that I have gone to the actual museum once, and then I think I went to the ark once. So it's basically, I've been there twice to the museum, but it's offsite from, the ark is offsite from the original museum, but both are well worth your time. If you're traveling, especially like Barry, you're retired. If you ever you want to go on a cross-country trip to the east side of our country, I would suggest looking up the Ark Encounter. It's phenomenal. It's that not only do they have period pieces of, hey, this is what it looked like in biblically speaking and potentially and archaeologically speaking, this is what it looked like when Noah and his wife and his 3 sons and their wives were on the ark. It also gives you very insightful strategies that might have been employed to keep, let's say, fresh water on board, or to feed the animals, to muck out the stalls of the animals. They really put a lot of thought behind it because they have defended the biblical scripture for so long that someone somewhere had to come up with viable reasons when they were in debates, and they've been in many debates, right? So the the scientific and legitimate potentials of what could have been and how they might have done this and might have done that, just even small things like, hey, wait a minute, they didn't have to fit a live or a full adult size rhino in there. They didn't have to take a full adult size elephant in there, right? 40 days and 40 nights. They didn't have to do that. So, hey, how do you fit a giraffe in there? Well, maybe you take a baby. Maybe God sent, 2 young giraffes, one female. We don't know that. So, I don't usually think about those things when I'm reading the Bible, but these are legitimate things from thinking people. So to get back to the other thing, what's that other thing, Otter? That other thing is the situation we're in this world, right? I also read that, what's his name? Prince Henry or Prince something. It's not Charles anymore because he's their king, not mine. One of them went to Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, they are desperate. These crazy, people call them elites. I call them parasites. But they're crazy and they're desperate. They have to stoke up war wherever they can. They know they're not going to win. They know they only have a limited time. But they're not going down easy. And the fact of the matter is, Ukraine is one of their pivot points, one of their, flash points. They love Ukraine. Why? Because it's so very, very corrupt. It was overthrown in 2014 by the help of No Name. Some people know him as McCain. He's not with us anymore. I had nothing to do with that, just for the record. But he's not with us anymore. So one of the things that the Royals want to do is prop up their flashpoints, right? So they had North Korea, that's gone. They had Venezuela, that's gone. They had Ukraine being dealt with on the other side by part of the axis of sovereignty. I think I told you before about a great content provider. He calls himself Burning Bright. I don't know that he's ever said his real name, but he calls himself Burning Bright. And he has a series. I think it's on what's that literary? It's kind of like a literary thing where you can subscribe. You don't have to pay. There's paid and there's paid and free content. But he's called Burning Bright, and his thesis is the Sovereign Alliance. Okay, now it's not original to him, I don't think, but I'll tell you what, nobody articulates it the way he does, that's for sure. And he might even claim it to be original. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is this. I believe, this is me, right? You don't have to believe this. I don't want to bring you into my jackpot. But there's a reason why Russia and China are not complaining about what we're doing in Iran. All right? There's a reason. And why is that? Because they already worked it all out. Back channels are essential. So Trump, Putin, and Xi, they already worked things out. Okay, it's been hammered out. The details have been hammered out. Everything is going according to the plan by the sovereign alliance countries against the invisible enemy. That's who we're fighting in Iran, guys. You don't really think we're fighting Iranians, do you? Because if you're watching this show, you probably think a little bit differently than the average consumer of mainstream media. And that means that it's not really Iranian people that we're out to decimate. And as Donald Trump has said, and he said a lot of things, they have already been decimated. The battle is over. The war has basically been won. But now I think there's a lot more, narrative wins that can come. Is it hazardous? Certainly. And I'm not just saying physically. And here's the thing. Do we really know what's going on there? I mean, seriously. Do we really know? How many times on the internet have you seen things like fake videos, fake, maybe even AI or game generated battle scenes? How do we know what's going on over there? We don't. We don't. Do we know that Donald Trump lies sometimes, uses deceit as a strategy? Of course we do. We're in a war, ladies and gentlemen. He has never hidden that from us. Ever. He's always told us that he will fight the deep state. He will fight the invisible enemy. And he says it repeatedly in ways that don't make the actual statement a target because the mainstream media is brain dead. Okay? And their owners, they're puppeteers, if you will. They're not going to point it out to the retarded media. They don't want them to learn the truth. So Donald Trump is able to speak in a truthful manner under the radar to people like you and me. Now, does he do this always? No. Frequently, yes, but always no. So when he's speaking, we can, with a certain percentage of being correct, assume that what he says today might be rescinded tomorrow or vice versa, right? That he doesn't say something today and tomorrow he's going to finally come out with it. But it's always calculated. The war has not ended yet. They have pretty much claimed the victory, right? I would imagine that it's like a chess. I've heard this analogy. It's like a chess game of two extremely capable, powerful enemies. And they're across from each other on a chessboard. And they both understand intimately the game, the strategy, the rules, the methods. And within a certain distance of moves, they have realized that there's probably a single-digit amount of moves left. The outcome is already pretty much determined. The good guys have won, ladies and gentlemen. It's just a matter of time that the bad guys go. But like I said a few minutes ago, they're not going to go easily into that dark night. They just won't. They're not built for that. They're like rats. Okay, you're not going to get a rat out of your kitchen when you got him in the corner until you dispatch the rat. The rat's going to hiss and spit, and I won't give my impression of a hissing and spitting rat. I don't want to do that to you because that would probably either disgust you or make you laugh, and especially those of you that are on the road, perhaps. I don't know. But what I'm trying to describe is this war that we're experiencing. It's not symmetrical. It's not conventional. It's something completely different, and it's fought on different levels. What I like to focus on, and again, I've made no secret of it. That guy, Burning Bright, has a podcast called The Narrative. If you ever want some stimulating thought and deep consideration of the things that are going on around us in this battlescape, they call it, I guess, then check it out. It's on Sunday nights, and it's got it's on Rumble. So basically, they discuss on various levels how this war is being fought, and much of it is in the narrative landscape, battle space, whatever you want to call it. When we're talking, even us, as we talk to people in life, and certainly not on the platform or stage that Donald Trump has, right? But we're able to talk in certain ways to convey a message. Well, that's what Donald Trump does. And since he's a wartime president, he said it himself, since he's a wartime president, he has to always calculate. And it doesn't look like it, right? I mean, it seems sometimes that it just comes off the cuff. He doesn't even think about it. He's just, rambling on about this, that, and then bam, he says something. And people are like, wow, why would he say that? That was mean, or that was stupid, or whatever. But he calculated not only the delivery of it, not only the time frame of it, but the words, the phrases, the things that he says. they mean something to someone, right? Not to everyone, but they mean something to someone out there. And they get the message. This just popped in my mind, right? This just popped in my mind. It's also done on the other side. I mean, I don't watch Chinese TV. I don't watch Russian TV. All right. I don't watch British TV. But I have seen videos. And I'm going to give you an example of how I believe it was done, how I believe this was done. This example comes to us from Venezuela. Do you remember when Maduro stood on some sort of stage or platform and he was acting with bravado and he told Donald Trump, "You want me, you come get me," right? And then a day or two later or whatever it was, Donald Trump went and got him, right? What did we find out? And I wish I had the link to this. I would love to tell you, this is where you can find it. Maybe I'll post that later. But it was later found out that there were U.S. intel agencies and the special group of our military that were poised to take out Maduro. Now, were they the good guys? I don't think so, because Donald Trump, for all intents and purposes, and I know people hate to hear this, is one of the good guys. And I think what happened was there were back channel communications between them for a long time. Maduro discovered that the threat was there on his soil and ready to strike. Hey, Barry, we watch RT on Rumble. It's always good to hear all sides. Yes. What is RT about, by the way, Barry? I've seen some things that vary greatly from what I think to be, I don't know if I want to use the word truthful, but they vary greatly from the things that I believe to be a good consensus of what's going on. So what is their main, Russian Times? Is that it? The Russian Times? I'm not sure what the title of that is, but I've seen it. It could be a different one though. I'm not sure. But the deep state was, who knows how close to getting Maduro. And I remember that he cried out. So his populace or mainstream media people thought, oh man, Maduro's just, emoting and he's pissed at Trump like everybody else in the world, right? The mainstream media thinks that everybody's pissed at Trump. The fact of the matter is he was signaling. So there was signal in the noise, so to speak. Russia Today. Thank you, Barry. Yeah, Russia Today. Yeah, I had them on X for a while. And then they started highlighting some stuff. But I do here's the thing. We have to remember that Vlad Putin has deep state in Russia. Terrorism, domestic terrorism in Russia. Xi has a deep state, a terrorism issue in China, okay? Especially the commies, right? And Donald Trump, of course, has the deep state right there in Washington, D.C., where he lives. So I don't know if Russia today is deep state or not, Russian style, right? But I do see some truth on it. I do see some things, and it gives us a different perspective. That's for sure. I remember I was stationed in Korea for a year, and I remember looking at news that was translated into English, and I remember, and I didn't watch it a lot, but I remember that things I was learning or watching had nothing to do sometimes with the United States. Nothing to do with the United States. And it took me a while, but because I was young and I really didn't have any grasp of the world. Not to say that I have a great one now, but I was always used to US-centric news reporting, right? And here, these people were talking about different aspects of worldwide news, and it had nothing to do with the US. So it's always good to see a different perspective, at the very least, to make you conscious or aware of what's going on around the world without it going through an American lens. Now, of course, I love America. I think it's the greatest country in the world. But at the same time, we can be a little bit, I guess you could call it American-centric, right? So yeah, Russia today is, in my opinion, and I agree with you, it is a different perspective, and it is good to hear all sides. Now, going back to that battle space that we're in, the narrative battle space, there's where a lot of people get tripped up, right? Because people want to think, oh, the president always tells the truth. Yet we know that there hasn't really been a president that always told the truth, at least not in our lifetime. I mean, we have, and in our history books, that for the 20th century was a shambles for presidential integrity. I believe that Roosevelt was a communist. I believe Eisenhower, he was probably a communist. I believe that World War II, the narrative of that event, or the events that were encapsulated in that. Hey, Marcos, good to see you, brother. Were related to us in our history books as mostly a pack of lies. The account of World War II, and if you're interested, hit me up on Messenger, and I'll give you a link. One my favorite article. It's called titled "Understanding World War II" by a guy named Ron Unz, U-N-Z, Unz, whatever. And it is exquisite. It is very heavily footnoted, very heavily sourced, and reliable, in my opinion. I mean, who the hell am I? But I think it's very reliable because, and if you read it, I think you'll agree, it takes a different approach, yet it indicts, the mainstream version of World War II, but basically tells you where you can find out more information about it. It doesn't really tell you, hey, this is this and that is that. This is how things really went and this was a lie. It says, hey, check this out. That the history of World War II was written by the best, the most brilliant historians of the time within 10 years of the war. Fresh, they were investigating. And then after that 10 years, it was eradicated, that narrative. And we have what we have today, which if you speak out against it, if you criticize what has been written, what has been told about, what happened in Germany, then wow, there is a complete multi-billion-dollar apparatus to stain you, with vitriol, and they even had the trademark, and you know what that trademark is, that says, you're anti this because you think differently. Well, like you were saying, Barry, Russia today gives you a different perspective. Why is it that we have to have one? So this alliance of sovereign nations, Russia, I mean, these are the big ones, right? US, Russia, and China, they are moving forward as patriots of each respective country. They are moving forward into a multipolar worldscape, right? The evil sons of guns that used to run the system, they wanted it a one world system. They wanted everybody in the UN. I mean, they got to conquer those people like, Russia, because they think that they can work outside of the Federal Reserve System, right? Well, look what they did to Gaddafi in Libya when he wanted to, start a sovereign monetary instrument in Libya to help his citizens. India, exactly, Barry. Thank you. India is one. That's huge. I mean, India is it's a continent, right? So think of how many people they have there, and think of what India means to the world. I truly do believe that Africa would be very similar if it wasn't for all the balkanization that the usual suspects have created there throughout generations, right? So they always want these new and extremely poor, but very highly vaccinated, Bill Gates, populaces in Africa, right? And then when you get one stronghold, one really civilized place like South Africa, they got to decimate it. First of all, they send a bloodthirsty communist and make him the best guy in the world. Oh, yeah, they celebrate this guy. He's a wonderful human being, but he kills the white people. Whatever you want to call Mandela, I call him a bloodthirsty communist, right? he started a lot of mess there. It's kind of like when they put in Zelensky, right? What does Zelensky want? He wants war. Why? Because his voters want war. That's who these people are. Barry says Blood Diamonds. Yes, Blood Diamonds. That was a good movie, although it had DiCaprio in it. I'm not a real big fan of his, but it does tell the story of what England has done. And there's a story that a lot of people don't, how do I put it? They don't highlight anymore, is the British Empire. There is there's an outlet called Promethean. It's on Rumble. And also YouTube. Promethean Action or something like that. And it's really cool because there's two older ladies, especially. One is, her last name's Kokinda, and I can't remember the other one. But they will come out. They'll tell you exactly what's going on. They don't mince words, and they're not afraid to use the terms that are needed. They're more official, of course, than what I do. But it's refreshing to hear that there are people, and I think that group went all the way back to a guy named Lyndon LaRouche or somebody. I don't know if Lyndon was his first name, but LaRouche. And that was a movement. I want to say they propped up the guy who had to back out, the billionaire who the usual suspects kidnapped his kid. It's escaping me, the guy's name right now, but he came on and he said the great sucking sound would happen after NAFTA. And of course, that's what happened, right? So we have the opportunity now, and Donald Trump is placing us. Well, it's the military behind him, right? But we are being placed in a position of power so that we can defend without war from a position of strength. And that's what's going on. And that has to be destroyed by our enemy to the greatest extent possible in order for them to win. But again, as we discussed a few minutes ago, the chessboard, it's pretty clear to people who know how to think that the bad guys, while they're still alive and kicking, are no longer in control the way they used to. And to go back to that crypto space, I think there were 4. So if you did crypto, one, we're at 78,200 and something for a Bitcoin. That's Federal Reserve notes. 78,200 and some Federal Reserve notes have to be scrunched together just to get one Bitcoin, right? The same Bitcoin that in 2009, I think it was used, 10,000 Bitcoin were used to buy 2 pizzas. So, we have seen some massive deflation, whereas with the Federal Reserve, it's just a piece of junk, right? To be kind to it, has lost 98% of its value and has seen massive inflation. The Bitcoin has seen massive deflation, and it's a great store of value. However, where I'm going with this is there are 4 monetary instrumental projects, tokens that are out there: XRP, XLM, XDC, and HBAR, Hedera. So these 4, and if I'm not right on that, Matt, if you're still watching, if I'm not right on that, XDC might be the one that I'm missing on. But anyway, what it means, and I don't know the complete story, but what it means is that they have now permission to be in the banking sphere. Okay, this means to anyone who knows how to think that the Federal Reserve has lost power. I was debanked. I know you've probably heard this 1,000 times if you watch the show. I was debanked from the Bitcoin Otter Private Membership Association had a bank account. XDC is correct. Thank you. Had a bank account with Lone Star National Bank, right? So it was a purge by the Federal Reserve System that anyone, even in any sense, that touched, much less had a business in crypto, was purged from the Federal Reserve banking system. And man, they sent me questionnaires. trying to dig down into the details of what I do, all these different things. And I really didn't take it seriously until I received a letter from them, and I saved it. I saved it. I think it's in my desk here. Saying that you're debanked, Otter. Adios. They were like, Javier Milei, afuera! You're out, Otter. You're no longer with us. And then I had to look around for a while to find a bank, and finally I did. It's called Old Glory. It's one of those digital banks like USAA that don't have any branches. But you can, nowadays you just take a picture of a check and you cash it or whatever. And you can still do electronic. It's all online and all that. So it's cool. And they're very censorship resistant. They were willing to take in the Otter when no one else was. So none of the Federal Reserve weenies wanted the Bitcoin Otter Private Membership Association to exist in their bank, or probably exist at all. But there it is. So when I'm talking about these projects, especially, I would guess the biggest right now is XRP. And here's the thing. And do I have some? I guess full transparency. Yes, I do. I have probably I have 3 of the 4. I have a little bit of XLM, a little bit of Hedera, and a little bit of XRP. Right. I like to try and get exposure in as many as I can because. And I like to use this example Matt and I were discussing earlier today that I kind of liken it to when we had on the home video market, we had VHS, we had Betamax, and we had, well, this is really showing how old I am, laser discs. You all remember that? If you got some gray hair, if you remember that, I know you do. So we had these 3, we had the emerging home video market. Okay, that's where it was in the 80s. We had the emerging home video market. And we had different ways of viewing video, but the usual suspects, and I suspect a lot of this was Hollywood, those producers and so forth of crap and all that, because it's Hollywood, right? But the bankers behind it all didn't want to back, and I would imagine maybe one bank backed one tech, one another tech, right? But the one, of course, that won out was VHS, right? So Betamax had smaller tapes, so that was probably more convenient. But maybe they didn't market right. Maybe they didn't do this right or that right. What I'm saying is, the analogy I'm trying to formulate here is that right now we have, and now don't get me wrong, there are different use cases for XRP, XDC, XLM, and Hedera. They have different use cases, but they're all in the financial sphere, as it were. Okay. The best analogy I heard from a content creator on YouTube was this. It's sort of like if you were building a building, you get permits before you start construction, right? Now they have the idea, they have the blueprints that they want, and these are working cryptos, ladies and gentlemen. They're not meme coins, right? So at the very least, they might be worthless. Who knows? Lord willing, they won't be in a year or two. But they're not without a use case, and they have it's varied. The use case is different with each one, but they have use cases. So if you're going to bet on, and that's all investing really is, right? If you're going to bet on a project, you want to make sure that it has a use case. So these financial transactional instruments, which at some point can also be instruments of investments because they'll give you a return, right? These particular corporations, I guess they're all corporations, they have use cases. So Matt says XRP cross-border, XLM peer-to-peer, XDC international, and HBAR, you forget, see, you're my age, Matt, and we do forget these things at times. But thank you for that info. So as Matt has well articulated for 3 or 4, there are use cases. Now, are they the only crypto projects that have aims at providing these services? No. but they are the most advanced. I think if some of you were can remember, I think it was last year, 500 banks received licenses from XRP for cross border transactions. 500 banks. Eric, good to see you. We're talking a little bit of crypto here. The news was that the permits have gone out for the workspace around transactions, financial transactions. And the winners so far that have received licenses to be involved in right now they're in this world called the Federal Reserve System. But we will be, Lord willing, activating and finding freedom outside of that monetary dungeon called the Federal Reserve System. And the winners so far have been predominantly XRP, XLM, XDC, and HBAR. So these winners have received the permits to begin building. There is I think the deadline was June 12 or something like that in I want to say it was the Clarity Act, but we're going to maybe see more. I don't know, of these instruments, these monetary transactional instruments. But if it's me talking, and I am not a financial advisor, right? You're not going to see financial advisors on Facebook with these geeky, birth control goggles on. Oh, by the way, they're blue blockers, so they have a use case too. Anyway, you're not going to see people like me giving financial advice, and I don't do it. I try to educate, but I don't give financial advice. Awesome. Eric, you are a savvy man, my friend, a savvy man. And that's basically what I said to me. And it was financial advice to me, and that's the only person I give financial advice to. And I would, tell you, if you want to listen, that the only person you should accept financial advice from is yourself. So BCGs, spell it out for us, Eric. I'm not familiar with that term, BCGs. But I do like the way that you see the emerging projects. You throw a bet on each one of them, And I would suspect, Eric, you're a business owner. I would suspect that you don't, put the rent money out there to be lost or waited on, right? I mean, how long have we been waiting on these cryptos? I know I have since 21. Birth control goggles, yes. I thought you were talking about cryptos, BCG cryptos. I don't know, but birth control goggles, I certainly know intimately, right? So where I'm going with this is that we have the opportunity, because patriots, okay, and they might not just be American patriots like we are, Russian patriots, right, Chinese patriots, and I still say I'm going to look into this, and I haven't, but Xi, his dad was locked up by the CCP, so I think he is on a warpath against the commies in China. And I think it's working, or at least their brand that has been a nemesis to the world for so long. And the deep state, right? So the deep state, we know they have deep inroads into China as they do in America, right? Same with Russia. So we're winning, ladies and gents. We are winning. And one of the ways that we can see we are winning is the financial structure of the new, I don't know, I don't want to call it new age, but it's a new way of doing business, literally, but also banking. If you own crypto, you are a banker. What do I mean by that? I mean that you no longer have to wait for a bank branch to open for transactions. You might say, oh yeah, but I can do that online, Well, I'll tell you what, if you receive certain, let's say a check, doesn't your bank tell you, oh, we got to wait for it to pass vetting, or we got to wait for it to do this or that? Not anymore. Not in crypto. You make the transaction, and depending on the blockchain, It could be almost instantaneous. So think about it. We are the ones that are awake. Are we going to lose? Maybe. Maybe we're going to lose in this crypto thing. But I'll tell you, when I'm protecting my family, when I'm trying to help my family out, when I'm trying to make it so that I spread what, I've worked for almost 30 years now, when I spread that across different investments, I want to do it in a way that if one fails, the other one's going to, keep it up. But how many people just have an IRA? I think half the people in America don't even have that. They have no savings. And it's horrible because it was done to us by a predatory banking system, right? And they're not just into banking. Remember, all wars are bankers' wars. So they're into killing people too. And I'm not talking about the branch down the street, guys. Let's not take this too far. I know a couple guys that ran banks, and they're very, very godly men. I served with them, and I would just say that they're exemplary men. So I'm not indicting your average bankers on Main Street. I'm talking about London. I'm talking about DC. I'm talking about New York. Okay, those guys, the evil, horrible people in our world that don't have any real love at all for humans. So here's where I want to go with this. If you are paying attention, you can already see the writing on the wall in their particular battle space, which is finance, right? So the evil ones had to master the financial workings of all the nations that they infiltrated. So they had to worm their way into the financial structure or financial landscape of each country. And they were kicked out of hundreds of countries. There's one meme out there that says it was 109, but I don't know if we can be certain about that. But they've been kicked out of many. But they really persist. Okay, I believe they are the current brand of the usual suspects, the so-called Illuminati, the International Criminal Cartel. They are backed by none other than Satan. I truly believe that. I do truly believe that. And they have been doing things to humanity for so long and getting away with it for so long that a comeuppance is more than overdue. And part of what these projects are doing is giving us an off-ramp from this evil financial system, right? When we're talking about money, ladies and gents, people like you and me, most of us trade time for money, but we're only limited on our time. So we are necessarily limited on our money. Now, as bankers, which anyone who owns crypto is, as bankers, it's up to us to fail, right? If we don't have a responsible approach, we're going to fail. I can fail. Absolutely. But that's what freedom's about. Freedom is also the freedom to fail, the freedom to make mistakes. So when we're looking at this new landscape, what are we seeing? We're seeing potential for failure, but we're seeing a huge ceiling raising, destroying metamorphosis. At least I do. And I'm all about preaching hope, right? I learned from the best, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, Jesus Christ, who died on a cross and called it victory. It wasn't until I was able to understand that, to agree with him, because most worldly minds would say, wait, they killed you. How can you have won? Well, on the third day, he came back. How's that? How do you like them cookies? Right? So the victories that we talk about now aren't always visible to the people around us. In fact, they can make for awkward Thanksgiving dinners that I'm sure you all have had as well as I have, or barbecues or celebrations where you're not with the people that you choose to be with anymore. You might be with family and you choose to be with them, right? But 90% of your time is spent with someone else. Now, where I want to go in this last, we're almost done, guys. If you have anything you want to talk about, throw it up there, please. But I wanted to mainly focus on this upcoming opportunity, and what I'm describing is the ability that we now have to move into this new landscape, this financial landscape, with freedom as opposed to slavery. Let me, I guess, flesh out those terms. Freedom means you have an honest ledger. And I want to tell you that Bitcoin is really a ledger. The blockchain is a ledger of transactions made. With the financial system we currently have, there's nothing of the sort, because there are places where these evil people can create what they call money. And it's not fair, because we should all have the ability to create money. If that's what they do, why can't we do it? And they tell us, yeah, you can get a job. Yeah, you know what? You know the exact hand gesture I want to show them for that. Yes, but I'm not, because there's kids watching, or there might be. So what I'm saying is that this new landscape is going to enable us to get off of that highway to hell called the Federal Reserve, because they do it to us every now and again. They pump and they dump. Now, can cryptos do that? Of course they can. Of course they can. But what we're seeing now with the Genius Act, the Clarity Act, and I know they're just government instruments. They're government, how would you say, government guidelines or whatever. But it's backed by law. It's the best we humans can do. Let me put it that way. It's the best we humans can do is set a law that is going to be followed by average people, right? Not just those in Washington or those in Moscow or Beijing, right? So, or London, even worse, London, the worst. So when we go forward, and we are going forward, I know you all are forward thinkers. When we go forward, we're going to go forward knowing that we don't have to be tied to or chained to this system. Now, you might say, and rightfully so, hey, it's already 2026. Trump was elected in 2024. Who's the new person that's coming in 2028? I'm not going to pretend to know the answers, ladies and gents. But my optimistic viewpoint, and I know some people think it's overly optimistic, is that things will change so much in the next year or two that no one is going to ever want to go back to the old system. And that the old system has been so gutted. What do I mean by that? U.S. aid defunded. Did you hear about SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center? Wow, doesn't that sound official? Doesn't that sound very moral? Doesn't that sound very virtuous? Rotted through with racism, rotted through with horrible, horrible corruption. They are the ones who, I don't know if you guys remember that Patriot Front, a bunch of white people in khakis with masks on, right, acting like neo-Nazis or whatever they want to call them. That group, funded by SPLC, right? If you don't have racism, you have to fund it and create it. And that's what these ugly people feast on. But yeah, no, not anymore. Not anymore, ladies and gentlemen. We're winning. We are winning. And that's what I want to focus on. So, to wrap it up, I want to celebrate a bit of a victory with the upcoming, hopefully, building projects on somewhat decentralized. I mean, at the heart, XRP is a corporation, so it's not decentralized. But our ability to be bankers is definitely decentralizing banking, right? Because it's not going to be a central bank. It's going to be you and me. That's something to celebrate. So these instruments are going to be backed. These stable coins, which will be transacted. The particular, for instance, the XRP stable coin is RL, Ripple Labs USD, Ripple Labs United States dollar, right? So they have USDC and all those, right? There's a bunch. Tether, there's a bunch. But I think I mentioned this before. All of these have to be backed with assets, okay? And I don't know how they're going to make it transparent, but they're going to make it transparent in such a way, which all of these blockchains are transparent, just so you know. All of these transactions can be looked at by you and me. Imagine if they put government accounts on blockchain and you could go up on the Explorer and look at it. Look at every transaction from, let's say, I don't know, the energy department or whatever. Hey, man, this wallet just siphoned it off, and here it goes. How do you think California or New York would survive? They wouldn't. They wouldn't. Money laundering would be out of the question. So all that to say, I think we have a bright future. I think we're going to see better times. Tomorrow, maybe not, man. We're still going to pay whatever. I think I paid. It took me $72 to fill up my pickup truck at $3.32 a gallon. And that's cheap for most people. That's most people don't get, talk about California, I'd probably up to $7 or whatever. But where I'm going is maybe not tomorrow. But ladies and gentlemen, and I'm saying as soon as July 4, because the celebration for, 250 years has come. So I'm saying right now, my opinion as an optimist is this. As an American, God-fearing Christian, I believe good times are coming. And I believe that they're not going to be too far off. This is my opinion. You can, share it. You don't have to. But what I would like you to know is that regardless of what happens here, God is in control. God is in control. And so does your privacy. In what way? Meaning the privacy is gone as far as being on the blockchain? Yes, I agree with you. Privacy is gone when you're on the blockchain. So what's the payoff? What's the balance there? No one can truly stop you from making or receiving transactions. Right? When we see these things in the media that say, "Oh, this Bitcoin account was seized," bunk. Unless you have the keys to that wallet, you can only watch it. Right? So, yeah, if they know who it's attached to, yeah, they can come get you. Sort of like the Matrix, right? Where they can come get you in the real world. Yeah, I guess that's the analogy I'm going to stick with. You can be, in the blockchain, in the cryptoverse and transact, but they want to come at you in the real world, right? I get it. Yes, I do get that privacy thing. There are what are called privacy coins, one of them being Monero. I haven't looked into it a lot, but they're out there. I don't know exactly how they're best utilized to keep your privacy. Yeah, it's, it's the fact that privacy will be given up at a certain level, but I think there's a good payoff there too. And I could be just foolish about that. I'm not sure. Anyway, I want to let you know that God is in control, and my friend Deb could use some prayer. She's in a hospital right now, and so prayers for Deb. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I really want to let you all know that I care. I do this because I care. And thank you for participating. Thank you for hanging tight. Been about an hour-long show. If you're listening to this in the future, thank you. God bless you too, Barry. God bless you all. And God bless America. The Bitcoin Otter is out.